Welcome back to Poetry Corner. Today we'll discuss Romanticism and Dark Romanticism. These styles existed from about the 1820s until the 1870s. Romanticism celebrated the discovery of self. In contrast, Dark Romanticism, or Gothic writing, emphasized human fallibility, insanity, sin, and death. First, we'll look at Romanticism, popularized by William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, John Keats, Percy Bysshe Shelley, William Blake, and Lord Byron. They produced work that expressed spontaneous feelings, found parallels to their own emotional lives in the natural world, and celebrated creativity rather than logic. First, we'll talk about John Keats, who lived from 1795 to 1821. Although he was only 25 when he died, he left behind 54 poems, from sonnets to epics, which cemented his place in history as an accomplished poet. Although he is counted as one of the great Romantic poets, he himself would not have associated himself with the other poets listed above. Here is his poem, Bright Star, Would I Were Steadfast as Thou Art. Bright star, would I were steadfast as thou art, not in lone splendor hung aloft the night, and watching with eternal lids apart. Like nature's patient, sleepless eremite, the moving waters at their priest-like task of pure ablution round earth's human shores, or gazing on the new soft fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors, no, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in a sweet unrest, still, still to hear her tender taken breath, and so live ever, or else swoon to death. Another great Romantic poet is William Blake. However, his work was neglected in his lifetime. Unlike many of the other writers, he came from more humble beginnings and lived and worked in the metropolis of London. He viewed his work as accessible by everyone and advocated for social and political change. You can see this advocacy in this first stanza of his poem, Auguries of Innocence. An augury is an omen, a sign of what is to come. To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. A red robin breast in a cage puts all heaven in a rage. A dove house filled with dove and pigeons shudders hell there all its regions. A dog starved at his master's gate predicts the ruin of the state. Turning to dark romanticism, we must talk about Horace Walpole, who is considered the father of the genre. He wrote a novel in 1764 titled The Castle of Otranto, which contained elements that may seem cliché to modern readers, but which were new when he was writing. These included things like secret hiding places, the supernatural, and death. Another famous Gothic writer is, of course, Mary Shelley, wife to Percy Bysshe Shelley, a Romantic poet and daughter of the early feminist Mary Wollstonecraft. Mary Shelley famously wrote Frankenstein as part of a competition with her future husband Percy Shelley and Lord Byron while they were staying in Geneva. Many people consider Frankenstein to be the first true science fiction novel. I will now turn to Christina Rossetti, who lived from 1830 to 1894. Her father was an Italian poet and Dante scholar, and her brother Gabriel Dante was also a poet. Rossetti was influenced by both Romantic and Gothic writers. Gothic themes about mortality, inconsistency, and corruptibility figure prominently in many of her works. Two of her most famous Gothic poems are The Dead City and The Goblin Market. Both are long-form poems which tell detailed Gothic stories. Here is a short poem she wrote from first-person perspective of someone who has passed away. After Death. The curtains were half drawn, the floor was swept, and strewn with rushes, rosemary, and may, lay thick upon the bed on which I lay, where through the lattice ivy shadows crept. He leaned above me, thinking that I slept, and could not hear him, but I heard him say, poor child, and as he turned away came a deep silence, and I knew he wept. He did not touch the shroud or raise the fold that hid my face or take my hand in his, or ruffle the smooth pillows for my head. He did not love me living, But once dead, he pitied me, and very sweet it is to know he is still warm, though I am cold. Of course, the most famous Gothic or dark romantic poet is Edgar Allan Poe. He was an American writer who lived from 1809 to 1849. He was a supporter of art for art's sake and helped develop the poetry and short story genres by concentrating his criticism and development on form and style rather than ideological concerns. Poe made his poems pleasing to the ear by incorporating rhythm, a unique feature to romantic poems at the time, which were much more focused on being emotionally and aesthetically pleasing. Poe's most famous poems are The Raven and Annabel Lee. However, here is another poem which highlights Gothic elements and his use of storytelling and rhythm. Here are the first two stanzas of Edgar Allan Poe's Dreamland. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright, I have reached these lands but newly, from an ultimate dim Thule, from a wild, weird clime that lieth sublime, out of space, out of time. Bottomless vales and boundless floods, and chasms and caves and Titan woods, with forms that no man can discover, for the tears that drip all over, mountains toppling evermore, into seas without a shore, seas that restlessly aspire, surging onto skies of fire, lakes that endlessly outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, their still waters, still and chilly, with the snows of the lolling lily. Thanks for tuning in to Poetry Corner. I hope you enjoyed learning about Romanticism and its sister, Dark Romanticism.